phones and other electronic devices, please. Thank you. At this time, would you please rise for a moment of silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Doreen, would you please call the roll?
Amo, Cheney,
Here.
Hines, Kulisek, Duke, Bureau, Fagion.
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Also joining us this afternoon is Madam Chairwoman, Legislator Benelli, and Legislator Tortel. Good afternoon. For continuity purposes, as we go through today's agenda, I will ask those who have business before us to come and speak on those matters. I will then turn to the members of this committee and allow for their questions. Then and after that, I will allow other legislators not on the committee if they have additional questions. Before we begin, in the spirit of this great nation, allow me to quote Founding Father James Madison, who in 1790 said, quote, "There is not a more important and fundamental principle in legislation than that the Ways and Means ought to always face the public engagement, that our appropriations should ever go hand in hand with our promises." As a reminder, I would ask all participants today to be sure to speak clearly into their microphones and make sure that your microphone is turned on when you do wish to speak. I may have to say that a couple of times during the meeting. We've noticed in the last 2 days that we've had some audio issues here, and we hope to figure out. That being said, I will turn to agenda item number 1. And joining us here this afternoon, I see that we have Paul Johnson, member of the Board of Ethics. May I ask you please come? Hi, Doc, how are you today? Please come and join us. And as I just mentioned, please make sure you also hit that button there and make sure it turns on the red. Sir, there you go. Good to go.
I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you. I provide a brief synopsis of our committee. We handle between 375 and 415 disclosure forms each year, and that, of course, is done by your committee members. We only have 2 fixed costs in our budget. One's a confidential secretary. We'll be having a change of status of that position in the near future, and legal fees. Legal fees run about $205 an hour. That's a blended for professional and paraprofessional. And we probably run between 5 and 10 hours per month. The executive branch has already approved our proposed budget, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Doc. I'd also point out that part of the Board of Ethics, that this part of the budget represents 0.01% of the total county budget. That being said, I'll offer it up to questions from my colleagues. I'll start with Legislator Hines. Am I allowed to ask an budget question? We do have a full schedule, but I'll a little latitude.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for your service. I was looking at the ethics site about a month ago, and I didn't see any disclosures. Are these supposed to be posted on the county website?
They are supposed to be posted, and we try to keep track of them. At this moment, we have 6 delinquent filers from last year, but we do notify others that they need to be kept appropriately.
My question is about the candidates.
Yes.
Candidates.
So they have to disclose the campaign expenditures. Is that what you're referring to?
No, the ethics disclosure.
Oh, we currently have 6 delinquent filers. I don't see any of those names on that list.
So you're not posting on the website.
I would have to check with our secretary and see if it could be updated. I can't speak to that. Thank you. That point you remember. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Any additional questions from members of the committee? Not seeing any. I'm going to call the question in terms of, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. Can I get a motion and a second for a motion by Mr. Hines and a second by Mr. Cheney? All right. And that being said, I will call the question as to the budget line for the Board of Ethics. All in favor, aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I just want to take this opportunity to remind you that Dr. Cooper has left the committee, he left the state. He is a legislative appointee, so we currently have a vacancy on the committee, and I guess that falls under your jurisdiction. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we'll turn to agenda item number 2. And at this time, we'll call up Gary Abramson, Chief Attorney for the Legal Aid Society of Orange County. And I don't see that he's here right now. So what I'm going to do is put a circle on that, and we're going to keep the gas pedal down. And I see we do have some other colleagues here, so we'll return to that. At this point, I will ask that we move to agenda item number 3. And joining us today is Jim Monroe, Esquire, Administrator of Assigned Counsel, and Langdon Chapman, County Attorney. This is for agenda item number 3, and this is for the budget on assigned counsel. Can I get a motion and a second, please? Motion by Mr. Vero, and a second. Second by Mr. Hines. Okay, and gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Yeah, okay, you quoted James Madison, I give you Jim Monroe. This is really just the 18B Indigent Legal Services budget more than anything. In totality, under state law, we're not allowed, of course, to decrease what the appropriations are. We have to continue that same level of appropriation. We also run a separate indigent legal services program, which isn't part of this budget, and that'll be dealt with through a state grant program that I think we're all otherwise familiar with. The only one comment I do have as we're trying to work with the state on our indigent legal services budget is I would like to ask for one minor modification in this budget, which is to reduce the printing costs from $16,000 down to $4,000 and shift that remaining $12,000 over to the assigned counsel administrative services.
Mr. Chapman, could you just cite that page for?
Sure, I'm sorry, page 539. So if you look at page 539, the legal fees services, they're at $73,000. I'd like to ask you to move that to $85,000 and simply take the $12,000 from the printing costs at the bottom, which is at $16,000. And that's going to help us work with the state indigent legal services office a little bit to get some more administrative support from Mr. Monroe's office.
Okay, I'll make the motion myself that we adjust the following lines. Again, Mr. Chapman, can you give us those lines again?
Sure. If you're agreeable, you would be reducing line 577080 from 16,000 to 4,000 and increasing the legal fee services line 571250 from 73,000 to 85,000.
All right, as noted. I'll make the motion. I need a second on that. Second by Mr. Vero. And any discussion on that motion? That being said, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor, aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. And I'll offer any questions in terms of this part of the budget. I'll note that, first of all, I want to thank our budget director as well as the budget staff. One of the most interesting pages in the budget is a page in front of every department, and it shows the percentage of the actual county budget. And just for note here, this portion of the county budget is 0.27% of the county budget. So that being said, I'll ask if there are any questions of legislators. Mr. Keeney, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My question has to do with that line 571250. That's a pretty significant increase. What are the factors that have led into that increase?
So what we're doing, Mr. Cheney, is working with the state. This handles just the county taxation portion. There's also the state grant portion. The bottom line is the responsibility for the indigent legal services program has just grown dramatically. The state will fund a good portion of it, but they will not fund all of it. So I've gone to the state saying, look, we can reallocate some from the printing line to the administrative line, and maybe you at the state could give us some more consideration there. And they haven't committed to it, but they're going to give us the consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. That being said, any additional questions? I have a question from Legislator Tortel. Make sure you turn that microphone on, and the floor is yours.
I apologize. It's a little hard to hear you over here. I think everybody needs to move a little closer to the microphone, or the microphone a little closer to them. I believe Legislator Hines asked in regards to page 495, 560, 522, which is one of the questions I submitted. I just checked now. I don't see the response to it. Is that correct? Is that the justification you just gave for that line? I couldn't hear legislative line.
I'm sorry, did you say page 495?
Page 495, line 560520, assistant county attorney. The
Sure,
line was increased.
That's a different department. We haven't gotten there yet. But I did email a response back to the clerk of the legislature within 5 minutes of getting the question.
Right now, we're in assigned counsel.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, it's a little hard to hear.
Okay, we'll work a little bit harder to make sure we speak into the microphone. Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? That being said, I'll call a question on the budget as presented and amended. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, we'll continue along on our budget list, and we will move now to the county attorneys. We'll move now to the county attorney's portion of the budget, and the county attorney's portion of the budget is located on pages 491 through 499. I'm glad Mr. Chapman hasn't run away yet. I'll need a motion and a second to discuss this portion of the budget. I'll make the motion myself, second by Mr. Vero. And Mr. Chapman, sir, the floor is yours.
Sure. So let me start off by answering the question I think that Legislator Totel just asked. The bottom line is, as COVID hit, the courts shut down. So when we had 2 vacancies last year, I simply asked not to fill them last year, which is why county taxation and the law department dropped 11.7% in 2021. So now the courts have fully reopened and then some, and we're simply filling those vacancies back. Did you hear that?
Yes, thank you. And that's the same, then, it would be the same thing that's happening in the line below that for the associate account clerk too.
So the associate account clerk too, and I addressed this in my answers as well. What happened there is we had an associate account clerk too for many years. We then shifted to a higher level position and ultimately shifted back to the associate account clerk too. So we have the associate account clerk 2 position filled. We did away with the fiscal director position, the fiscal manager.
No problem. Thank you. I'll offer Mr. Chapman the floor. Any additional comments in related to the county attorney's office?
We are back in full business is all I can say right now. So the courts, seems like every trial lawyer out there was holding off suing the county has decided to find a way to do so.
That being said, I'll offer questions of the floor. I'll remind my colleagues that the law department accounts for 0.70% of the county budget. And I'll offer questions from my colleagues here. Not seeing any, then I will then call the question. All in favor to the budget as presented for the county attorney's office? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Thank you.
We're going to return on our agenda. I see that we now have Gary Abramson with us. So we're going to turn to agenda item number 2. And Mr. Abramson, please join us at the podium. And I'll need a motion and a second on the following for discussion on the legal aid portion of the county budget, which is located on pages 532 through 535. Motion and a second, please. Motion by Mr. Kulisek. I'll make the second myself. Sir, the floor is yours. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I just want to say that the budget is fairly simple this year. We have complied with the county executive's wish that we maintain it at the level that it has been at. That is also the requirement of our state funding source, the Office of Indigent Legal Services. In exchange for doing so, the county, in exchange for the county doing so, we and the assigned counsel panel get a substantial amount of money that helps pay for salaries of experts. Really, for the first time in my career here over the last few years, we've not had to worry if we need to hire a psychiatrist, for example, or someone to examine a weapon. Anything like that is now available to us. And the cost of the county has been to maintain us at the level we were before all this money.
Thank you, sir. I'll offer questions from my committee members. Not seeing any, and other legislators joining us this afternoon. Not seeing any, I'll remind my colleagues, again, thank you to the Budget Office, that this portion of the county budget is 0.48% of the county budget. That being said, I'll call the question. All in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So before I leave, I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your support over the last 2 years. The county attorney's office has worked very amicably and closely with us, as has members of the county executive staff and on behalf of legal aid.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Moving along, we'll move to agenda item number 5, and this will be joining us this afternoon is Mary Pat Smith from the County Executive's Office, and we are going to discuss in item 5. I need a motion and a second to discuss the County Executive portion of the budget, which can be located on pages 470 through 476. A motion and a second. Mr. Zero on the motion. I'll make the second myself. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Fagione, members of the legislature. Just to present the county executive's budget as proposed for 2022, it's fairly similar. Not so much has changed from 2021. The one question, I believe, is pertinent to the 2 proposed positions, which we, after discussion and assessment of those needs, have determined that would be beneficial to the county exec's office to reclassify those under 564210, which would be staff assistants. We do feel that based on various assessments of the office and with regard to the pandemic and the amount of staff that we have available to do research, to do constituent relations, outreach, things of that nature, that these positions would be beneficial to the county exec's office at this time. Questions?
Thank you so much. I think we will have a couple of questions here, and I'll offer it up to my colleagues here before us. And not seeing any, I'm going to start by saying that, first of all, thank you for being here this afternoon. And there are 2 portions of your aspects of the budget that I'm going to talk about, and I try to keep as organized as possible. And so just pardon me and go with me on this. I see that both in the county executive portion of the budget, as well as central services portion of the budget, there are line items for proposed new positions, 1 in each department. Cost with fringe for both of these positions will be in excess of $180,000, almost $200,000 when you account for fringe and benefits. That being said, I have a proposal that I think may serve the purpose of those offices as well as in a good interest for the county. And if my colleagues will allow me to indulge me, follow me as best we can here in the budget book. I'm going to offer a motion on the following. On page 473, I would like to make a motion that we remove item 569970. This is the proposed position, 569970 on page 473. I propose that that position be deleted and the costs associated with that position, including any related benefits packages. I'm going to make a motion that we remove that position, and I ask for a second from my colleague. And I got a second from Mr. Padu. And in discussion, if you will, I will show the roadmap in a series of maneuvers coming up that will allow the county exec department to have 1 position by contracting 2 positions. So this is the first step in that motion. With that being said, I'll offer it up for questions of my colleagues here today. I'm not seeing Legislator Tortel.
Hi, Mary Pat. Could you, I'm in agreement with your motion, but I'd like to know what the proposed position was for. You have one for here and then in your other department under central services.
So both positions would be reclassified as staff assistants. The county exec's office currently has one confidential secretary who functions for the county exec, but also does responsibilities for the deputy county executive and the director of operations, as well as assisting myself, assistant to the county executive, and Justin Rodriguez, the other assistant to the county executive. So in the interest of too many chiefs, not enough Indians, that was the rationale behind having the two staff assistants who would be able to assist the entire office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Tortel. Again, we are on the motion to remove the one proposed position in the county exec department. And I see the questions have been asked and answered. I will then call the question on the motion to remove that position. I will call the question, all in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. In keeping with my roadmap to get you a position, I'm going to make a following motion as well. This will be found on page 473. And this is a motion to increase the budget line 560880, assistant to the county executive. I make a motion that we increase that budget line from 95,249 to 190,498. That's 190,498. That is a motion to increase the assistant county executive line from 95,249 to 190,498. I am going to make that motion myself, and I seek a second. Second by Mr. Zero. My discussion on this is the roadmap to give the county exec and central services a position that they could look to fill in those departments that will best suit their needs on that side, on the co-equal branch of government. That is the motion that I make, and it is seconded. I offer for discussion here before us today. Mr. Hines, the floor is yours.
Yeah, unless my math is wrong, we're coming up short. You did away with 50,000 position year.
The roadmap will be, I will tell you that in the next motion that I make, we will come full circle on that. And that is in the next branch of that department in the central services.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Additional questions? Mr. Paduch, allow me to put your microphone on, sir. Stand by. Go ahead, Mike.
All right, so I'm a little confused how you're adding it to 190, 498 from 95 to 49. Are you including both those positions in his staff and are going to be eliminating the one in central services? Is that your plan?
Mr. Paduch, the plan will be at the end, there will be one additional position, not two additional positions in both of those departments. Proposed in the budget before us was a new proposed position in the county exec department and an additional position in the central services. In the motions that I've made before us and in one more additional motion, we will result not in a net positive of two, but a net positive of one position between those two departments.
90 included benefits, is that it?
I am asking that right now that 190 is allocated to that budget line and that additional benefit costs that are necessary to fill that position will be found in the next motion that I make.
Okay, I'll listen to that.
Thank you, Mike. Any additional questions on that motion before us? Legislator Tortel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the total budget line would be 192.49, but my question, and this might be budgetary personnel would need to answer this. That line represents a salary for a specific person. There's only one person that's assistant to the county clerk or her chief. So I'm trying to figure out how I know you've got another motion coming, but to me that's a salary increase on that line for what's in there already. How do we put that? You know what I'm saying? It's a little.
Legislator Tortel, I'm glad you mentioned that. I would like to amend my motion to include the following. On page 476, I would amend the position numbers as stated here. The assistant county executive position line, I would increase that from 1 to 2. I would additionally ask that the proposed position be decreased from 1 to 0. Total number of positions in this portion of the budget will remain the same. So we're going to increase the assistant to the county exec line by 1 and decrease the proposed position by 1.
I understand that, but then it begs the question, the justification that you gave me, Pat, of needing, you have chiefs and you need substaffing. So I'm just trying to circle around it to get a better understanding. I think there's a ton of staff going on, and like I said, there are 2 positions being created. We have people that are receiving increases that are above what CSA and our contract employees are doing, traveling.
Is that a question addressed to me, or?
Yes, the part about if we're adding another assistant, the assistant to the county executive, that's another assistant, is that in line with the position that we were looking to create, or is it another supervisory position?
As the county exec noted in the letter that he sent to the legislature the other day, we are willing, the door is always open to work with the legislature in the best interest of the county exec's office, obviously, but also our constituents, the residents of Orange County. So if this seems like a viable option, the county exec's office would make that work.
I can make it very clear that I've spoken to people in the county exec's office, including the county exec himself, and I told him some specific ideas that I had for today, and he was very amicable to these motions that are here before us. And it's easy to say that, and I don't, the Chief and Indians comment is, it is what it is. An assistant to the county executive, by no stretch of the imagination, is of any sort of absolute senior management boss at that level. It's an assistant to the bosses. That being said, to my motion and as amended to the increase in the 1 position line and the decrease to the other position line, any additional questions on that motion? That being said, I'll call the question to that motion. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Right, motion carries.
Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Don't run away yet. We're not done.
Oh, I apologize.
We still have to vote, and indulge me if you will, if my colleagues will allow this, to complete the maneuvers that are here before us. I would ask that that we also have to vote on both the county exec department budget and central services budget. Just to keep the logic straight, if we vote on the county exec's portion of the budget now, I have one more motion to make in the central services line that will clear up those 2 moves. So that being said, I'm going to move on to the central services portion of your budget so that we can complete those maneuvers. And then at the end, we will vote for first the county exec's budget line and then the central services line. So that being said, I will need a motion and a second to discuss the central services line. I got a motion by Mr. Hines and a second by myself. I'll offer the floor to Mr. Paduch. Sir, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. While we're on the county executive's budget, I just want to bring up a few points and possibly make a proposal. I talked about this at our first budget committee meeting in regards to the trending information that we received from budget department. I don't know how many have reviewed it, but I just want to make an offer here. Under contractual expenditures in the county executive's office, he's averaged over $12,000 over the last 4 years. It was $10,017, $9,018, $14,500 in 19, and $18,000 in 20 that he did not spend. However, the county executive budget does not have a line for contractual expenses of 579,990, which would be an austerity line, which gives him the ability to decide what not to spend that money on. In fact, I'm going to make a proposal. Let me see what I wrote here. My proposal is going to be to put $10,000 in line 5, it'll be a minus 579990, which is not included in his contractual, that line's not even there. So what that'll do is make sure that all this extra money that's been in the budget every year for those last 4 years that averaged $12,000 will not be taxed. So I'm asking to put 10,000 in austerity, and he can figure out how not to spend it when in fact he doesn't spend it anyway. So that's my proposal, and I'm looking for a second.
Mr. Paduk, and I will offer that question. Can you just cite that budget line number?
Well, there is no budget line number for his austerity. He doesn't have an austerity line. I want to add it to his budget, and it would be line 579990.
So before, and allow me with respect, I'm going to offer a question to our budget director who's here with us today. And hopefully she can give us an answer to the question about adding that line to that portion of the budget. And then I'll offer for a second, and then we'll move on from there.
It can be done.
Can you speak right into that microphone?
Sure, you can add that line if you search it.
Okay, thank you. So that being said, we have a motion before us to add a budget line to the county exec's portion of the budget. The budget line number is 579990. And Mr. Paduk, how much money do you want to allocate in that budget line?
It would be a minus $10,000.
Minus 10,000. There's a motion for the addition of budget line 579990 with a budget line amount of minus $10,000. Motion by Mr. Paduk. We need a second. Second by Mr. Kulisek. And discussion on the motion. Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We've subtracted $10,000 from the revenue, not from the expense portion of the budget. Do we not also have to subtract $10,000 from the revenue portion?
Yes, you would. But I was kind of waiting until you have this all played out.
Just so that Shannon remembers that. We got 10,000 to play with.
That being said, we do have a motion and a second. Discussion on that. I'm going to turn to Mr. Paduk. I'm going to turn to Chairwoman Benelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to note from the committee members present that if we do look at this total contractual only executive budget, can you hear me now? Okay. All right. So that has already been reduced, the contractual expenses, by 13.43% from 2021. I'll just like to note that.
Thank you.
Our figure comes out to $5,690.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any additional questions to that motion? Katie, could you say that once again in terms of the reduction of that line?
I will be happy to if this mic works. Okay, so the contractual line you will see on page 474 totals if you look at the column for increase and decreases, it is a decrease of $5,696 total for contractual expenses, which equates to 13.43%. So that line has already been cut from the 2021 expenses to 2022.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
That was garbage, and I don't really, maybe you could just give me.
I can tell you, Mr. Paduk, on page 474 of the budget book, there's a line that says contractual. It's the highlighted line. It's in the middle of the page, and it shows a decrease of 13.43%, which is a minus $5,696.
Okay, that has nothing to do with my proposal. Nothing to do with it.
Okay, noted. Okay, I will ask, and I'm going to turn to the chairwoman once again.
Well, I beg to differ, because if he's already cut that amount of money and you want to cut another $10,000, that's going to make it very difficult for him to meet all of his budget items. So it does actually do refer to that.
Additional questions? Mr. Kulisek, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, the money that's been cut from there already, is the liability insurance and public officer liability insurance. That's nothing to do with the line item. We could save that money on liability insurance. We could save that. If we could save any more money, we could also do that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kulisek. Any additional questions or comments to the motion before us? Doreen, I got Mr. Cheney, sir.
I guess I'm just pointing this out. Right now, that section for contractual has a total of only $36,722. Cutting $10,000 out of that seems overly aggressive, and I'm not sure that I can understand the basis for doing so.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Okay, that being said, Mr. Paducah, I'll give you the floor one more time.
All right, if again, I'll ask, everybody's got this trend that I've asked for years. Debbie Suzuki was gracious to put this together for all of us for our review. What it does is it shows us the modified budget and the actual money spent for the last 4 years. By reviewing that, you would see that there was $10,000 in 17, $9,000 in 18, $14,000 in 19, and $18,000 in 20 that wasn't spent under contractual expenditures, which was approved in the budget. But we taxed our taxpayers on it and added that money back to our undesignated fund balance. Look, by putting in austerity, the county executive judges where he can make those cuts. He knows. He's done it himself on a couple of departments that we're going to talk about soon. So I don't know why his department doesn't have that. We have oversight over it as well. Look, I have proposals to the legislature. It isn't any different to me. It's our financial and fiscal responsibility to see if there's ways to reduce the budget without hurting services, etc. And I think my proposal does exactly that, and that the county executive can make those cuts with no issue.
Thank you, Mr. Paducah. What I'm going to do right now is I don't see any additional questions. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on the motion. Doreen, would you please do a roll call vote?
Cheney.
Oh.
Hines. Kulisek. Paducah. 0. Fagione.
No.
4 noes, 2 ayes. Motion fails.
Thank you, Doreen. And returning to the central services portion of the budget here, I want to thank Legislative Council for getting me back on straight here. There was a series of motions that were made to reduce position in the county exec's portion of the budget. What I'd like to do now is to bring full circle the steps taken, and what I'm going to do in the central services portion of the budget is I am going to make a motion on page 479 to remove proposed position number 569970. I make the motion to remove that position and the costs associated with that position, including any related benefits packages. In addition to that, I would like to amend the position numbers in this portion of the budget. The amended position numbers will be as follows. I would make in this motion is to decrease the proposed position amount from 1 to 0, which therefore then decreases the total number of positions in central services from 6 to 5. And I'll seek a motion and a second on that. And I'll motion by Mr. Vero, and I'll make the second myself, even though I made the motion. You want me to fix that? All right. All right. And discussions on that position, deletion, and amended numbers. Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours.
Just so I'm clear, so when we finish with these motions, it looks like we'll have $24,791, not counting the impact of reducing the benefit. that something will need to be adjusted to straighten that out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Questions from committee members to the motion? Okay, I will then call the question on the motion. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. So, if my paperwork serves me right, what we have done here is we have eliminated 2 proposed positions, and also then in the county exec's portion of the budget, added funding and increased the position count of the assistant to the county executive. And before we move forward, I'll turn to legislative council. Are our motions and second in order on that? Okay, so those 3 actions today have reduced the overall footprint of personnel -1, and as Mr. Cheney noted, with additional funding that will still be available inside the budget. Those are the motions that are there before us. I will then offer the floor, and I'm going to turn to our budget director.
I just want to be clear, there will be some adjustments with the benefits, like Mr. King said. But the difference will come from taxation. He and I will adjust it later. So,
Okay.
okay. So the revenue piece is included 410011.
And that'll be in benefit, not in increase. It'll be decreased. Thank you. In addition to that, since those motions and movements have been made, Mary Pat Smith, I'll offer you the floor in terms of central services, your discussion on that portion of the budget.
None.
Okay. That being said, any questions from committee members related to this portion of the budget, central services? That being said, I will call the question to the budget as presented for central services. All in favor, aye. Opposed? And you know what? We do have to come back on one more thing. We do have to vote on the county exec's portion of the budget, if I'm not mistaken. So that being said, thank you for all dealing with my logic and all of that. But that being said, as presented and amended on the county executive portion of the budget, all in favor, aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all for working with me on that. Thank you, Mary Pat.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, moving right along. Next, we have item number 6 on our budget hearings. And this afternoon, we offer the floor to the county clerk's office. And I see that Deputy County Clerk Kelly Eskew is here with us. I will need a motion and a second on the county clerk's portion of the budget. That portion of the budget can be found on pages 482 through 490. Motion and a second, please. I'll make the motion myself, and a second by Mr. Hines. And Deputy Clerk Eskew, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, I have some good news for the budget. The revenue is up over $1 million from the same time period of 2019 due to land record reporting. Our transactions are up, our workload is up, and our staff is down. The county clerk's office and my staff have been doing a great job. We're down 12 funded positions, and we gave back 5 during COVID in 2020. We're including money in the budget for a mobile DMV unit. It's something we were working on due to losing our location in Port Jervis, but due to COVID, it came to a halt. We've included that in the budget. We've also asked Eric Ruscher to include us in his search for space in Port Jervis because we anticipate that finding a vehicle quickly in current economic situation is going to be a little difficult. So we've asked him to look for a shared space for us in Port Jervis. I think I have questions from Legislator Tatel and Legislator Fagione. I don't know, and Legislator Cheney, do you want me to answer those, or do you want to ask me the question?
Well, what we'll do here is we're going to open the floor to some questions here. And I know that in terms of my questions, I mean, with all respect, as the chairman, I'm going to go first real quick. Number one, first and foremost, as someone who represents the city of Port Jervis, it is great news to hear that that the state DMV services will be eventually making a return to Port Jervis. I am grateful for all of your work. And of course, Annie Rabbit as the county clerk and all her work as well. But this is part of your plan, correct, to return DMV services to Port Jervis?
Yes.
Okay. That being said, I have asked my questions, and I know that you've answered them offline. And so I'm happy with all the answers to my questions that I have. I'm going to offer the floor to my colleagues. I'm going to start with Mr. Cheney, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. My first question has to do with line 575120, which is lease agreement. And there's a pretty significant increase there. What's that attributable to?
That's attributed to the mobile unit. That would be to lease the vehicle.
And moving down to 576823, security service. Again, pretty significant increase. What was that?
Unfortunately, in the past, we have not budgeted enough to cover our security requirements. Atlas Security has been very good to us in Middletown and Newburgh, and unfortunately, we have an increased need for security in both of those locations. I don't know if it's due to COVID or people just being frustrated, but we've had several incidents in the past several weeks, actually, where the staff have had to call the police and push the panic button. So we do need 2 security guards in those 2 locations. Those 4. That's what the increase is for.
Okay, and then 586600 hospital insurance. It increased 7.46%, which doesn't normally sound like it's a lot, but compared to other departments, it seems to be. Is there a reason for that?
Plug that number in.
So we did base our hospital projection on an 8% increase this year. Rates have not come out yet, which is not unusual, but we did plan for an 8% increase.
Some of the other ones I looked at were like 1%.
And it depends on if it's the same number of positions. People sometimes will take the buyout. So there are other factors that include in this. But if everyone stayed the same.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Additional questions from committee members? Mr. Paduch, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cheney addressed a couple of them. I have one in regard to the security service too. Don't we contract out our security services at our buildings? And is this $50,000 or $55,000 increase an increase in their contract? Is that what that is?
It's just to cover the cost of the added security guard. But
That's the question though. We contract out our security services.
Atlas.
That's correct?
Yes.
Mike, the answer was yes.
Okay, so there's a $55,000 increase in the contractual expenses for them to add 2 people because we requested them. So their contract went up $55,000. That's what you're telling us, right?
Those security guards have been there in the past, and we were always scrambling to try to pay them at the end of the year because we didn't budget enough. That's why the increase is in there this year, so that we can cover that cost and not go over.
I understand. That's a pretty significant cost, like Mr. Cheney said. Well, I'll take that advice. And I want to drop down on the same page, 488, to 577820, specialty equipment repair. There's a $30,000 addition to this year's budget. Can you tell me what that's all about?
That is for the equipment for the mobile unit.
That's the mobile unit equipment.
For the DMV mobile unit, yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to keep going, or you want to keep done?
Mr. Paduch, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, well, I'm gonna move right back to what I've been talking about, and that is, wait, I'm sorry. First, can I ask you, how many positions were you talking about that are in your proposed budget that are funded?
I'm sorry.
He asked how many positions are in your proposed budget that are funded.
We have 80, they're not all filled. We have 80 positions that are funded.
You have 8 that are funded?
Mr. Paduch, the answer was 80.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm going to do is propose a 25% vacancy factor on those hirings. And here's the reason why. Last year, there was 80% austerity for hiring. That allowed the departments, all departments, to hire 20%. That 80% saved us $19 million in taxation. $19 million. I understand that the county did great. Look at our personnel did a great job. They got their increases and they still provided the services we needed. I understand that there's a need for some increase in personnel. Is it 8 positions? Probably not. So a 25% vacancy factor would let them hire 8. And those other 2 positions would not be, they would not be funded, and it would save taxpayers whatever the amount of the money of those 2 positions would be. So my proposal is to add a 25% vacancy factor for that line, which is, not sure what that line number is. That can help me out. 5603200. A 25% vacancy factor. That still allows them to hire 6 people, providing that the county executive says okay, then they can't hire 2. That's what that impact would be on the county clerk's office.
So,
It would save us.
Mr. Baduk, if I may, for just a moment, you're making a motion on budget line number 563200 of minus 25%. Is that what you're saying?
It's actually 560320.
I'm sorry,
That's what it takes.
560.
Can I respond to that?
Hold on, we have a motion here, and I need a second on that. Second by Mr. Kulisek. And Mr. Paduk, I will turn to Deputy Clerk Eskew in just a moment. Okay. Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
If you look on page 490, in 2020, we had 85. In 2021, we have 80. We gave up 5 positions, funded positions during COVID because we didn't want anyone to be laid off. We currently have 12 funded vacant positions. So I don't have 80 staff members right now. So now I'm not understanding to cut more.
This is not a cut. This is allowing you to hire 75% of the positions that are proposed and funded in your budget. It allows you to hire that many, providing the county executive says yes. I don't have an issue with you hiring back people. I just have an issue with putting them in the budget, and at the end of the year, maybe they're not hired back, and we charge the taxpayers for them. So a vacancy factor would allow you to hire 75%, and you could come back to us if you need 2 more.
Okay, Mr. Paduk, we have a motion and a second on the floor to your plan there. A discussion from committee members. Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours, sir.
Maybe I'm not understanding everything Mr. Paduk's saying, but if he's suggesting that there be a 25% vacancy factor put on the 80 employees that are listed here in the budget, that would mean they would have to drop to 60 employees, which is fewer employees than they have now, even with the vacancy. Am I correct in that, Minority Leader Paduk?
No, I would have Debbie explain that to you if she would. The 25% I'm asking for is on new hires. New hires.
So I believe what he's asking is to put 25% of an austerity against the total vacant positions, which Kelly is saying is 12 positions. Off the top of my head, I don't know what that number exactly would be because I don't know exactly which positions are vacant. So and there is an austerity in there based on about a 1 full-time position. So that is in there already.
Thank you, Deb. Mr. Kulisek, sir.
Yes, I think the deputy spoke to be able to tell you that positions are vacant.
There's 12 overall, 6 on each side. I can't off the top of my head tell you which positions are vacant.
Because each position would have a separate salary depending on how long they've been here. So you'd have to figure that out.
Well, to Mr. Paduk's point, what he's saying is that we don't want to put positions in the budget that we know aren't going to be filled. That's the bottom line.
But I can't do the work now with what I have. We're accomplishing, I know revenue's up over $1 million. We're accomplishing it with overtime. So you're gonna,
But you're not filling these positions anyway, so why fund them?
it's not that I don't want to fill them.
Well, they haven't been filled for years, actually. So.
Well, not years.
Yes, it's been years. Absolutely.
Mr. Hines and then Mr. Cheney.
Yeah, I think that we should allow the clerk to clear the people with needs. The biggest complaint I get is people that have to wait online at DMV. So I think if we allow them to fill these positions, especially in the DMV side, we would make the happier constituents. And that's one of our goals, to get the right staff to do the job. Obviously, they're understaffed in COVID because they're limited hours, limited access. Now, I think more than ever, they're going to need more staff to pick up positions on both sides of the clerk's office with respect to the work that was delayed throughout the pandemic. I don't see it. I don't know if anything we may have to do. I'm good with the written position.
Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if you go back and look at 2020 staffing, they had 85 positions. Whether they were all filled or not, that's, I think, immaterial to this question. They're asking now for 80, and if you even go back further and look at 2017, they had 78 positions. So I think that in line with what Legislator Hines has said relative to needing to provide good customer service and the increase in transactions by the department, that this is not an unreasonable request.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. And in conclusion, I would remind everyone that the county budget, the county clerk's portion of the county budget is 0.87%. And one of the most striking lines that I find so impressive is on page 485. It's the top line there, and it is called County Taxation. And it shows a decrease of $655,000. So if you want to find a more efficient staffing group of people in an operational budget, that's it right there. These guys are doing more with less each and every day. So that being said, to the motion before us, I will call. I got Mr. Paducah. I'll offer you the floor one more time, and then I'll call the question.
Comment on my suggestion here about a 25% vacancy factor. Let's recognize that the county executive stopped one of them from being hired. I'm asking for two. I'm asking for that second one. So he recognized that you might not need as many and that we could save taxpayers money. So in addition to his one, I was adding one, which would still give them the ability to hire multiple people back where they need them.
Thank you, Mr. Paducah. That being said, I'll call the question. And Doreen, for this, can we get a roll call, please?
Cheney,
No.
Hines, Kulisek, Paduk, Bureau, Fagione.
No.
4 noes, 2 ayes, motion fails.
Any additional questions or comments on the portion 6, the county clerk's budget? Okay, Mr. Paducah, I'll offer you the floor again, sir.
Go right back to our trends again. The county clerk's office average, let me see what I have here for an average, $212,000 not spent over the last 4 years. 99,000 in 17, 147,000 in 18, 74,000 in 19, 92,000 in 20. So my proposal would be to add $100,000 or minus $100,000 into the austerity line of 5799 9990. 579990. What that does, it saves $100,000 in taxation, and the county, the clerk's office apparently doesn't spend the money anyway, so I'm sure they could figure out in those contractual expenditures where that money could be saved.
Thank you, Mr. Paducah. We have a motion from Mr. Paducah on budget line 579990 for $100,000 in austerity. I need a second on that motion. Second by Mr. Kulisek. Questions and comments on the motion? Not any questions being asked. I will call the question on a roll call to that motion in a second. Doreen, please take the roll.
No.
Hines, Kulisek, Duke, Bureau, Fagione,
No.
4 noes, 2 ayes, motion fails.
Mr. Paduk, the floor is still yours, sir.
I think I'm finished. I would just ask though, I'm pretty concerned about the reviewing of our budget in regards to all the work that the budget department put in to put this trend together. That gives us 4 years worth of knowledge. Not sure anybody looked at it. Because if you did, you could understand what my proposals were, and you could actually try to change it if you thought it was too much. But your comments are just no. So I'm a little set back by all the work that was put in by the budget department to give us this financial information so that we could be more fiscally responsible. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Paduk. Okay, any additional comments or questions related to the county clerk's portion of the budget? Not seeing any. I will call the question then in regards to the county clerk's budget. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. And that's agenda item number 6. I want to applaud my colleagues for keeping the gas pedal down today. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. The Board of Elections is scheduled for 3:30 p.m. this afternoon for their budget hearing. Right now it shows about 4 minutes after 3. And then coming up after Board of Elections would be the Planning Department and then the Legislature. I will turn to our chairwoman, who is joining us this afternoon. We're going to jump on the schedule a little bit here. We're going to move to the item for the legislature, which is scheduled for 4 p.m. Joining us this afternoon will be the chairwoman of the Orange County Legislature, Katie Benelli, and also we'll have the clerk of the legislature, Jean Rampin, joining us. So in just a moment, we'll be moving ahead here. So that being said, let me get my paperwork in order here too. And this will be item number 9 on the agenda. Joining us this afternoon is Chairwoman of the Orange County Legislature, Katie Benelli. Also, Jean Rampin, Clerk of the Orange County Legislature. And item number 9 is the Legislative Board. This can be found on pages 500 through 507. And I need a motion and a second for this portion of the budget. I'll make the motion myself and a second by Mr. Kulisek. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and Clerk Jean.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to draw your attention to page 503, which is the Legislative Board's summary. And you will see that there is an increase in county taxation. We do not receive any other revenues into this line item. It's purely county taxation. It is a 7.62% increase. And then if you look down further on the page, most of those monies are attributed to employee benefits. And to further explain the employee benefits, I would ask that you flip the page to 504. And you will see that there is an increase of 14.54% there. And that is primarily, and you'll probably see it in other departments, and I know you spoke about it as far as hospital insurance is concerned. We've had some changes as to legislators either taking the buyout or going from the buyout to family health insurance for the hospital. So we've had 4 legislators change the hospital insurance. We've also had 2 legislators that, if you look at the item for retiree insurance, that is another $26,000 that you'll see in your budget as well. So the main part of the legislative budget, the changes really have to do with the employee benefits. Are there any questions thus far?
I'll offer the floor to questions from legislators. Well, obviously, Chairwoman, you're doing well. Mr. Paduk, Minority Leader, has a question. Mr. Paduk, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I'm not letting up on this. We're involved in this too.
Right, Mr. Paduk, if you could just hold on for a second. I was just talking about the things that I've discussed thus far. I still have further presentation on it, so you might want to wait until I finish that if you're going to go on to something other than what I just discussed.
Yep, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That's fine, great. But I do want to call your attention to page, 504. And you will see that account number 571820 is consulting services, non-medical health. This was budgeted for last year at $165,500. We're coming in this year with $167,000. Quite frankly, it's been a line item that we didn't use all of the money because we did not follow through on the plans that were there last year for this particular year. So that comes to this year, $167,000. There is probably some around $75,000 in there that has not been expended for various different reasons. And I'd like to just bring your attention to, we're all sitting here in these chambers, if you've been here, and I'm just going to bring recent history. For the last few days, in trying to have the technology work the way it should have, just in the chambers alone, we have had a very, very difficult time. We've gone through the pandemic. We did it remarkably well with using Microsoft Teams, and we were able to not miss a beat in doing the operations of the full legislature. Now that we're back in somewhat of a hybrid situation, we're having extreme difficulties in getting the IT services that we need to be able to be fully transparent with all of the public that wants to be able to listen. We've been down for the last 2 days as far as live streaming is concerned. Hopefully it's working today. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but I'm sure I'll hear later. I got a thumbs up over there. Thank you very much. But bottom line is, the county legislature's office needs IT services, and we need IT services dedicated to us. The IT department has done a remarkable job in trying to help us. Quite frankly, it's not enough. So in having conversations with Commissioner Burpo, who has been very helpful and very supportive, and also with our budget director, Deb, I would like to propose that that line item of $167,000 be increased to $227,000. This will enable us to either hire a IT person or be able to use the vendor contract either in place or a new one, and that's something that has to be worked out. I have talked to leadership about this back in the end of spring and June, and for the most part, and some other legislators, everybody was very supportive of it, and for whatever reason, it did not get into this budget. So we're kind of playing catch up here a little bit, and I want to thank Deb profusely for being absolutely wonderful and sitting down with Jean and I to be able to come up with these numbers that are reasonable and what we feel are give us a comfortable range to be able to put a plan together. I'd love to be able to tell you the plan is together, we're going to hire an individual, but we don't know that as of yet. But we know that this amount of money would either cover either an employee that's dedicated to the legislature for IT services, or would be enough to be able to use the vendor, whether it be the vendor contract in place or another one. So I would respectfully ask that you consider increasing that line item.
Chairwoman, what I'll do at this moment, I'll entertain the idea of a motion to increase consulting services line, non-medical, that is line item 571820. I'll seek a motion and a second to increase from $167,000 to $227,000 on that budget line. And I will be proud to support that, and I will make that motion myself. And I would seek a second by Majority Leader Mr. Vero. And committee members, comments and questions on that? I'll start with Mr. Hines and then Mr. Kulisek.
Thank you, Chairman. That consultant service line, wasn't that money going to be targeted to a budget?
Yes, it was.
We never did that?
And we never did it. No.
Right. So there's significant money there already.
There's around, I would say approximately around $75,000.
Right. Well, then you're asking for another
60,000.
Another 60. Mm-hmm. So 135 for one computer.
Well, it probably won't be a person, but we don't know that as of yet. So in talking with Deb and others, we felt that that was a reasonable number given the services that we need. And primarily, a lot of it is not necessary. It's actually for this room.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of money to me for maybe 10 or 11 meetings. You count, sometimes they're doubled up in one day, other times there's subcommittees that we form. $130,000 to me is a lot of money. It might be cheaper to have a consultant come in on an hourly basis.
And that will, and I have to tell you, I understand what you're saying, and that will be worked out. But for today's purposes, as far as the budget is concerned, it was agreed upon that that was a reasonable number given the cost that would be incurred as far as this is concerned. And it may not, we may be able to do something further with IT as well, but at this late date, that remains to be seen. And I'm just looking at this for the first time. So.
Yeah, I think it's too much money to support it. You have 75 there now. It should be done within the 75.
Well, I will tell you that I'm not comfortable with the 75 because I know that the preliminary contract we got for some of the things that were supposed to be happening in this building was over $70,000.
But we could use existing IT staff with the consultant, my suggestion.
We have been trying to. It's not working out.
Right, but I think if they work as a team with a consultant, might be able to keep it. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Mr. Kulisek, the floor is yours, sir.
I was just going to ask line items where the money's coming from. Is it house taxation?
For today's purposes, it would go to county taxation, but there are some things that would be able to offset this. And actually, Deb, did you want to speak to that? I got it? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kulisek. I will say that in working with the chairwoman and also our IT department, one of the things that we learned in the last year is the importance of being, I mean, the word transparent is often overused, but the idea of taking the people's work here in the People's Chamber and bringing it to our communities throughout Orange County. And the only way to do that is through informational technologies. And sometimes in big bureaucracies, there is a loss of what IT is and what it isn't. There are segments of IT that include computers, mainframes, stuff like that. There's also audio and visual, and those two things are components that sometimes in big corporations, in big organizations, they get assumed into that whole department. I think that increasing this budget line gives us the flexibility. I would suggest that we are very cautious in how we spend any of that money, and I would hope that we don't need to spend all of that money. But I would hate for us to go out and find out that we need an additional fund and not have them there on that budget line. So for that reason, I will support this today, and I ask my colleagues here on the committee to do the same as well. I'll offer additional questions to members of the committee. I got Mr. Cheney.
Just for clarification, excuse me, the 167,000 that's in there right now, what are the components of that?
Okay, so that whole 167,000 isn't free. We do have vendor services from O'Connor Davies for doing our budget work as well as the budget for OC. If you know, there's Generation Video that does Rodney, who comes here and videotapes our meetings and things like that. There was also over $6,000 spent for social media, which, quite frankly, we haven't taken advantage of, and I will highly recommend that we discontinue that contract as soon as we possibly can. But it does go into 2022, but that's something that's being looked at. And then the other was originally budgeted for outside consultant or a budget analyst. It was pretty fluid type of description.
And how much was in there for that budget analyst?
75,000.
75. So, and we're adding 60 to the 75 that'll be available for use with the video.
Hopefully we don't need it all. I'd also just like to point out too that sitting here for the last few days and even previous to that, there are a lot of departments that come, especially at budget time, that have done some wonderful PowerPoint presentations. And it would be, we have this beautiful screen here. It would be wonderful if we could use it. And we can't use it right now because for whatever reasons, and I'm not a tech person, but it doesn't gel with the live streaming. And this is mind-boggling to me that in today's technology, that we're not being able to utilize the stuff that we already have. So I think we need to put a strong focus on this and be able to use the stuff we already have and get the technical people in place that are going to help us and aid us to be able to execute that work.
I had Mr. Hines, and if you have additional questions, and then I have Mr. Vera, and then I think I have Legislator Stiganga. Mr. Vera. And Mr. Padilla.
I think Chairman Fagion makes a point in 60,000. I think that's our estimate. We need to do it to go forward to get understand where it should be. I mean, school districts are so far ahead of us already. Maybe we don't need to spend the whole $60,000 we're proposing today. Maybe some of that can be returned. But I think in order to get us into the 21st century, we need to spend that money.
Thank you, Majority Leader Vero. And we'll turn to Minority Leader Paduk and then Legislator Stiganga. Mr. Paduk, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Katie. We've been working on this for 2 years. However, I'd like to get a clarification. The 167 that we're proposing in the budget is going to be added to the 75 that's already there, which would make it 242. And Katie wants to add how much?
Mr. Paduk, if I may, let me interrupt you for just a moment. What is currently present is 167, and we're asking for an additional 60. So 167 plus the addition makes it 227.
Okay, let's be clear. She mentioned that there's 75,000 already there. That's included in the 167? Doesn't seem like it.
Yes, that is the case, Mr. Paduk.
Okay, then I agree with Katie. We need to get this done. We've been working on it long enough. We've been talking about it long enough. I actually talked with the chairwoman about this earlier, and I agreed. And she told me that that was one of the first things that she would do as chairwoman, is to make sure the chambers are up and running properly. So I was going to support that.
Thank you, Mr. Paduk.
Thank you, Mr. Paduk.
And I have Legislator Stiganga here with us.
I absolutely
Not on.
green is out again.
Yeah, you better.
I absolutely agree with this 100%. One of the issues that even us as legislators, that if we don't sit on a committee and we have a conflict where we can't come, there's no way for us to chime in. So yesterday, I tried watching YouTube, didn't work. It froze up. There's no interaction. And because we only have the one phone call that Minority Leader Paduk is using, that means that if anybody else wants to participate and be here and be able to ask questions, we can't. So, I mean, our biggest goal is to make sure that what we do here in this chambers is able to go out into the public for the people who cannot participate or cannot be here. It's very important that we get this area put the right way so that not only us, but every single resident in Orange County has the ability to see what we're doing and to follow our meetings. So even if it's only 10 meetings a month and we're adding specials, this is one of the important things that we need. So I am 100% behind this, that we get somebody in here that can actually get this working the right way so that we can include everything and have full transparency for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Stiganga. And Legislator Tortel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with this line, and I will make one statement on the lines where the salaries are being increased, the chair, majority leader, and our
If you will, for just a moment, we're here on the motion on this line itself, so the discussion is on that line right now. Okay?
I agree. We need the technology.
Okay. Thank you, Legislator Patel. And last, I'll have Mr. Hines.
All right, you might have sold me on the PowerPoint. It's a phone of mine too. Are we going to be able to buy technology with this money too, or is it only for?
We're not sure at this point. It's for whatever. We have a goal of what we want to achieve. So this is money to base us achieve that goal. It could be in various different fashions on how we spend.
We're definitely not hiring our own budget analysts.
Absolutely not.
I vote on that no every time.
No, absolutely not.
All right, you flung me over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. That being said, I'm going to then call the question on the motion before us. I don't think a roll call will be necessary at this time, so I'm going to call all in favor to the motion. Aye. Opposed? All right, the motion carries. And in keeping with our process here, we still have, of course, the chairwoman and clerk Jean Rampin with us. The legislative board portion of the budget is a 0.27% portion of the whole county budget. It is located on pages 500 to 507. Any additional comments, Chairwoman or Jean, in regard to our portion of the budget?
I just wanted to note, because there was a question that was posed in regard to the salaries. Those salaries, all elected officials' salaries, not only the legislature, but county executive, district attorney, all elected officials, including, ironically enough, the commissioner of elections, are done by local law. These salaries that you see in this budget do show an increase over last year. We had passed the local law that was adopted on February 6th of 2020, and it did reflect a salary increase. I would just like to note that the last time the legislators or the leadership positions received a salary increase, including, I believe, the county clerk and the district attorney is another entity, and the county executive. The last time, these are 2018 numbers.
Thank you, Chairwoman. In terms of this portion of the budget, I'll offer it to questions of committee members. I have Minority Leader Paduch and then Legislator Tortel. Mr. Paduch, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I'm not going to let up on our train. The legislative board is just as guilty. Our contractual expenses over the last 4 years, let me see what I average here, was $212,000 that we haven't spent. We don't have an austerity budget line in our department either. My proposal is going to be to add line 579990 under contractual and put a minus $100,000 in it. And I'll tell you the reasons why. And if you looked at the trend, you would know yourself. $78,000 in 17 we didn't spend, $82,000 in 18, $203,000 in 19, and $490,000 in 20. I think there's room for us to do a little better job, and I would hope that all of you would think that as well, and add that austerity budget line so that we can reduce the cost to the taxpayers. That's my proposal, and I'm looking for a second.
Mr. Paduch has a motion on the floor. A second is requested. Second by Mr. Kulisek. Discussion to the motion.
May I speak to it?
Chairwoman, the floor is yours.
Michael, I hear what you're saying, and I can explain just off the top of my head some of those numbers. And the first thing I'm going to say, you're going to remember very, very well. There was put into the budget monies from what I would call special stipends to be given to various different legislators to disperse amongst their community. Michael, you remember how much we went through those contracts and how we had to execute it. And eventually, we never used it. So there's money in the contractual that we never use. And I just spoke this afternoon about the contractual expenses in this budget. there was over probably $75,000 that wasn't used in this year alone. So I understand what you're saying, and there was money there for other types of purposes, and we didn't use it. Well, I can tell you today what I'm asking for, and the amendment that was just made, we're going to use.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Additional questions to the motion at hand? Not seeing any, I'll ask for a roll call. Doreen, roll, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cheney? Okay, roll call, please.
Cheney,
No.
Hines, Kulisek, Paduk, Vero, Fagione.
No.
4 noes, 2 ayes, motion fails.
Thank you. Any additional comments on the Legislative Board, page 500 through 507? I have Legislator Tortel, the floor is yours.
Just a note on those lines. I did oppose the local law, and I will still and always oppose presenting a very myself, and I feel that we need to address that and put it into a special committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Tortel. That being said, to the Legislative Board, all conversation's been extinguished. I will call the question. All in favor to this portion of the budget, aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll continue right along to pages 508 through 514, and this is the clerk of the Legislative Board, and Jean is joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And joining us is Clerk of the Legislature, Jean Rampant. I need a motion and a second on this portion. Motion by Mr. Hines, second by Mr. Kulisek. Jean, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Our budget for clerk of the board is pretty simple. We have county taxation increase of only 0.11%. We have personal services at 2.90%. Contractual is a decrease of 1.36%, and employee benefits decrease of 3.52%.
Thank you, Jean. Just as a reminder, the clerk of the Legislative Board represents 0.06% of the total county budget. Questions from colleagues as to this portion of the budget? Mr. Paduk, sir, the floor is yours.
First, I'd like to compliment Jean on the job that she does. And what I'm going to tell you right now is what should be happening in every department. Under her contractual expenditures, she averaged less than $3,000. That's how close and good a job she does. So my compliments go out to Jean in that regard. And the other departments, there's your example. You can do a better job, like I'm talking about, in regard to your contractual expenditures. So, Jean, congratulations on doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, Minority Leader Paduk. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Paduk. Not seeing additional questions, I will call the question to the clerk of the Legislative Board portion of the budget. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay, that portion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And returning back to our agenda, we will now move off here. We are now going to welcome to the podium our commissioners from the Board of Elections, and that portion of the budget is on pages 454 through 462. And joining us this afternoon, I see our commissioners, Commissioner Louise Vandermark and Courtney Canfield Green. Commissioners, good afternoon. Let me get my paperwork set here for just a moment. Right here in front of me. And so this is item number 7. The Commissioners of Elections are here for the portion of the budget known as the Board of Elections, again, located on pages 454 through 462. Can I get a motion and a second on that? Motion by Mr. Paduk, second by Mr. Kulisek. Commissioners, good afternoon. The floor is yours. And we ask that you please speak directly into the microphones, as there are people that are online, and it's important to speak right into the microphone.
thank you for looking over our budget, and we have, questions were sent to us, and have the answers that were sent, so we will answer that and any other questions. It's been crazy couple of years, the last 2 years of the board. There have been a lot of changes by the New York State Board of Elections, which has created a lot of unknowns for us, which makes it hard sometimes to pick our budget. Last year, I know there's different funds that weren't used, but going forward, we have really tightened it up, and we have more of a handle with the new laws. Because when things are unexpected, it's very hard to plan when all of a sudden the legislators pass a new laws for us. We try to go after every grant we can, to get every cent we can out of the state. We had 2,000 left. We won, and we're using that money up. We're going for every penny so we can save the taxpayers money. We really do try to watch every cent that's spent at the Board of Elections. One of the things I know we always have money left over at the end of the year is for election workers, and the reason that is because it's an unpredictable field. We don't know how many primaries we're going to have. We can tell you about election day, how many election inspectors, how many machine operators, how much equipment we're going to have, what our transportation costs are going to be incur that year. But we never know about primary day. That depends. So, I just want to explain that because I know that comes up every year. Why is there a balance in the per diem? You have to plan for a full election, that every election district is going to be open because you really don't know.
And in 2022, just to remind everyone, that is our gubernatorial state election year, so that will be an increased turnout, not as much as we had for the presidential election, but we do expect 50 to 60% turnout for a governor's election and a full primary, both Democratic and Republican candidates countywide.
Thank you, Commissioners. What I'll do now, as we've done throughout the afternoon, is I'll open up the floor to questions from legislators that are here. I know that some had submitted questions to you guys, so let's see if the questions here on the floor get answered, and I'm sure that we'll start with Mr. Genie, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Starting out with line item 560120. It seems there's a pretty hefty increase in the per diem base salary item, and just wanted to know if you could explain that. And also the county executive made a reduction in what your request was and what you feel the impact of that reduction will be.
Okay. The reason for the increase is there are new things that have been put in place, like the cure process now, that we have to have extra people come in. And that's when an absentee ballot comes in, before we just looked at it. Now there's a whole process that's involved. It has to be seen by a team, and they have to check everything on it. And then if there's a correction, we have to try to contact the voter by phone, email, and mail. We have to, try every way to get in touch with the voter, which takes time. And then the voter has time to correct it. And then we have to follow up with the voter. So all this is increasing our, the amount of people we need for per diem work. Also, the e-poll books, we need more teams to come in to get the e-poll books up and running for election day. We have to do, it's like a test on them to make sure that everything is programmed right. It's the same thing we do on our voting machines to ensure that the right ballots or type with the e-poll books that the right voters.
And then do the voter scenarios. Not the ballots, yeah.
So this all takes people and this all takes time, and that's increasing our per diem.
And also next year, as I just said, if you have a gubernatorial election, we will do all hands on deck in 2020. We will do a full rollout of voting machines, e-poll books. We would put out more e-poll books to review an increase in voter it's just in preparation for that.
Thank you for that. 571820 consultant services. There's a pretty hefty reduction there. Just wanted to ask what's comprised in terms of the services that are being provided, and also is there an impact? What impact is the reduction going to have on that?
Okay, that I think was a matter of switching lines. When the budget was done, you were on the phone with the state before we got here, that's why. Lines that we used before were switched, and that's why there was a reduction in one line and an increase in another.
And what types of services then are provided under this budget item?
Consult. Well, hold on. Sorry, Mr. Cheney.
Deb, do you have some input?
I do. This is one of the lines that we ask them to explain when they provide their budget documentation. So I have technical services for voting systems by John Glue and Nicholas Ventry, legal translating services, on-site day support for electronic polls, on-site day support for voting machines, shredding services, mail check, printing and fulfillment. That's it.
That's right.
Good. Okay, thank you. Then moving on, and this may be a quick, easy one. 573840 freight charges. They've been very small in the past, and there's a pretty hefty increase. Is that part of the shifting around that you mentioned?
That's right. That's transportation of our voting equipment is now on that line. So that's a shift.
And it had been under consultant services before.
Correct.
And then also 575400, radio, pager, mobile communications. That's something that's completely new.
This is for e-poll book data services.
Courtney, can you just please, there you go. Thank you. Appreciate it.
E-poll book data services that we have to required to have our Verizon cell service throughout the county. Every e-poll book has a Verizon service on it. We also have to have additional MiFi throughout the county where there is spotty service. We also need, in some places, we need boosters throughout the county just to enhance our cell service so that's so the e-poll books can communicate with each other. So that makes sure that a voter does not vote twice in the same day or during the week.
Okay, thank you. And then moving right along, 576820. It's specialty payment, and if you could just kind of, what are we buying under that, and service providers?
Yes. We have a list. Okay. We're looking at specialty payments?
Yes, please.
Okay, that's for our e-poll books, our licensing. It's for election night reporting software. That's where they read the cards and we're able to get the results up right away so everybody at home can see as the results are coming in from the election. It's for our Ask Ed Help Desk that tracks all our troubles during the day. So anybody could go in, and this way it keeps everything documented for the state and for us. And then we'll know, oh my goodness, we're having trouble with this machine now. This is the second year in a row. So it helps us track.
And staff.
And staff, yes. And our staff. Okay.
I think that gives me a good idea. Thank you. And then my last line item that I'd like to get some feedback on is 577080, which is printing. and that's, reduced pretty significantly. And I was just curious as to what impact that has on your operations, or is it just money that hasn't been spent in the past?
Right. We have been able to decrease that because we don't have to print as many ballots as we used to. Before, the recommendation was to print 110 ballots per voter. Now, with on-demand voting, we're getting blank pieces of paper. We're just doing printing off emergency ballots and absentee ballots. So that part of the printing has gone down.
Because we do on demand, we do not do ballot.
Okay, so the postcards that everybody gets sent, is that part of this and it's not going to change, or is that some?
That's a registration.
Okay, and that's not going to change. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney, and thank you, Commissioners. Great answers for those questions. Additional questions from committee members? Mr. Paduch, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on same page 459, the radio 575-400, radio pager mobile communications, that has to do with the same stuff, the voting machines, etc.
No, that's not voting machines. That's electronic. That's the poll book equipment and MiFis and boosters that we need through Verizon.
Okay, I got it.
Our machines
right, so now
are covered. Our machines are voting machines are covered.
579990, which is the austerity adjusted contractual. The county executive minus $50,000 that you can't spend this year and reduce taxation. I would say since 18, there was $355,000, 19 was $229,000, and last year was $203,000. So my proposal here is to up his 50 to 100 in regards to 579990 austerity contraction. And I'm making that as a proposal. I need a second.
Mr. Paduch has a motion on the floor to increase line item 579990 from $50,000 to $100,000. There's a motion. I need a second. Mr. Kulisek with the second. Discussion on the motion. Not seeing any, I will ask for a roll call vote on the motion.
Cheney, Hines, Kulisek, Paduch, Bureau, Fagione.
No.
4 noes, 2 ayes, motion carried.
Mr. Paduch, the floor is still yours, sir.
I'm fine. I'm getting nowhere here.
Thank you, Mr. Paduch. That being said, any additional questions from committee members? Not seeing any questions from additional legislators here with us? Okay, not seeing any. In regards to the budget for the Board of Elections, then I will, I'm losing my train here. In regards to the motion for the Board of Elections, all in favor, aye. Opposed? No, carried. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much.
And turning to agenda item number 8, I see that he is in the audience with us, our Commissioner of Planning, Mr. Alan Sorensen. Mr. Sorensen is with us this afternoon. While he's coming to the podium, I seek a motion and a second on the following. And this is item lettered A. This is a request to amend resolution 322, a request to amend resolution number 332 of 2018 to direct the funding for capital projects number 501-19S as follows. Purchase of commuter buses, $1,345,571. Scheduling software, $2 million. Bus shelters, $500,000. These funds were awarded through the New York State Department of Transportation Public Transportation Modernization and Enhancement Program, and this is legislative request number 187, and I'm going to make the motion myself. In a second by Mr. Kulisek. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to acknowledge I'm being joined this afternoon by my Executive Secretary, Administrative Assistant Ellen Russell. And yeah, I think These are part of the standard state operating assistance funds that come through our office and the Orange County Transportation Council. And it enables us to provide the commuter buses that you see throughout the county. And with respect to the bus shelters, there are a number of them out there that need to be upgraded, so we're in the process of getting that process started. So these are part of our ongoing work in transit and necessary.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll offer up questions on the floor from committee members. Mr. Kulisek, sir, the floor is yours.
A couple things. One is purchase 6 clean diesel buses. Are we not going to eventually go to any kind of electric or hybrid buses? All the other counties, I know, Westchester being one, out in Long Island, are going to all electric buses, some of them.
That is, we have just completed an alternative fuel vehicles study with our consulting team, and the recommendation coming out of that study is for us to move towards electric vehicles. There will need to be a subsequent study for that in terms of how we go about implementing that. There's, as you can imagine, technology and electric infrastructure that has to be put in place. But these bus orders that you have here for the diesel buses, there's a long lead time in order to purchase these buses. So it's not like we call up the dealer and they deliver a bus tomorrow. These are actually very specifically built for the purpose. So to answer your question, as we move ahead in future purchases of buses, we are exploring and I believe we'll be moving towards electrical vehicle buses.
What's the life expectancy of about one of these buses?
You're talking about like a 10-year life expectancy. This is part of a replacement schedule, so we're not replacing the entire fleet. That we're going to be stuck with it for.
So before we look at an electric bus, the progression of the change out, we're looking at 10 years?
No, sir. We are replacing buses on an annual basis. So, we'll be phased in as we move in that direction.
The second question is, in the documents here, it says that these buses that are being replaced have reached their end of their extended life or whatever, or useful. The old buses are returned to us and for auction, or where do they go?
They will be, they will be auctioned, and then those proceeds will come back.
I remember in the past, in conversation, maybe at a committee, that some of the buses, the vendors or operators are allowed to continue using them, even though they are being replaced with new buses.
I'd have to come back to you and get a definitive answer on that. I don't believe that is the case.
Thank you, Mr. Kulisek. Additional questions? Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours, sir.
I guess I'm looking at spending 1.3 million on buses, which is the operative part of it, and then $2 million on scheduling software. Could you shed any light on that expense and why it's so large and what it's going to do for us?
I asked that very question the first time I saw that come before me. Keep in mind we have 16 different bus operators that we have a service contract with here in Orange County. And so this scheduling software is software that is used throughout the state for bus operators and enables them to schedule their services and maintain it. I've had discussions as well with state DOT, and that's kind of what the cost is.
How frequently will this cost have to be renewed? Or, it would seem it's a one-shot deal, but usually with software, there are upgrades and things that happen, and then within 5 or 7 years, can become obsolete. Is it not expected that that would be the case?
There will be updates to this. Again, it's reimbursed 100% with the modernization enhancement program funding that we get from DOT.
Okay, so all three of these items, in other words, the total amount that's here, is going to be 100% reimbursed?
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Additional questions on item A? Not seeing any. I'll call the question on item A. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. We'll continue along to item B. I'll seek a motion in a second on the following. And this is a request to transfer funds from the capital project 501S PL-2013, new transit vehicles, to the capital project 504S PL-2020, the multimodal trans, I just lost my place there, multimodal trans in the amount of $4,908,741. These funds were awarded through New York State Department of Transportation Public Transportation Modernization and Enhancement Program through resolutions number 173 of 2013 and 234 of 2017. And this is legislative request number 188. I seek a motion and a second. I'll make the motion myself. Second by Mr. Hines. Commissioner, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, there has been a project that's been in the work within the city of Middletown for the better part of a decade, and that is the Multimodal Transportation Center, and that is a project that is being developed jointly with our office, City of Middletown, and Coach USA. That project will be using Modernization Enhancement Program funding to complete that project. It'll include a new bus transit center in downtown Middletown along Railroad Avenue, as well as incorporated in that is not only the bus terminal, but also stations for the buses to pull in, load and unload. There'll be parking there for commuters. And in addition to that, it just so happens that the Orange County Heritage Trail runs through that project site. So we have a keen eye on ensuring that that project furthers and enhances the Heritage Trail. And so we'll be incorporating into the design of that project amenities to further the purpose of the county's Heritage Trail and maintain the integrity of the trail. So there's a lot of synergies with that project. Again, that's coming funded through the Modernization Enhancement Program, which are New York State DOT funds, and those funds would cover 100% of the project cost.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll offer the floor up for questions. And not seeing any questions, then I'll call the question. To item B, all in favor, aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving right along, we will continue on into the Planning Department's budget, which can be found on pages 515 through 523. Take a motion and a second for the discussion. Mr. Paduch on the motion. I'll make the second myself. Commissioner, the floor is yours in outlining your budget.
Okay. We've submitted our budget, and one thing you'll notice if you go to page 518, we are the host agency for the Orange County Transportation Council, so the money that comes through the federal and state agencies is funneled through our department. So that's why when you look at the revenues, you see that our office has $9,314,808 in revenues. The amount of our department that is actually funded through county taxation is $1,375,248. Many of the programs that come through our office, when you see whether it's a dial-a-bus in the rural towns or the fixed route bus service throughout the county, that is funding that comes through our transportation council. We also receive, when you see the other revenues line there, that is for the service contracts that we have with the individual operators. It's the municipalities or the service operators that provide the matching funds. So there, it results in no cost to the county. In terms of, I know there was a series of there were some questions. We provided written answers to those questions. One of the questions I know that has come up has to do with our consulting services line. Departmental request is for $215,000, and that is on page 520. And it's line 571820. So 115,000 of that is funding that historically has been earmarked for the Orange County, Orange Library Association. And there's also 100,000 in there that is for the Orange County Land Trust. And those funds for the land trust are being set aside so that we can retain the land trust as we move forward with some of the county's open space initiatives to assist us in securing the conservation easements and monitoring those as we move forward. I am requesting in this budget the creation of 2 additional positions within the department. One being for a senior transportation planner, the other for a principal transportation planner. Those positions would be would specialize in our Orange County Transportation Council functions and would be eligible for 100% reimbursement through our federal funding.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the overview of the budget there, especially you're noting the one budget line. I do have a question in regards to some open spaces and issues with that like. Recently, I was contacted by several people in the community in regards, including the Riverkeeper, in regards to Brown's Pond in the Newburgh area. Can you shed some light on that circumstance?
Yes, they're through the function of the Orange County Water Authority. The Water Authority had secured a grant from the New York State DEC in the amount of $1.7 million for a $2.3 million project to proactively try to buy either secure conservation easements and or acquire lands around Brown's Pond for the purpose of protecting the watershed, source water waters for the city of Newburgh. So it's through the Water Quality Improvement Program, New York State DEC grant. That project included in that grant application was identified that $25,000 was going to be allocated to the Orange County Land Trust specifically so that they could work with the Water Authority to do the necessary work to go out, meet with landowners, secure those conservation easements, do the legal work that's necessary to get those conservation easements in place. Due to COVID and other factors, the fact that we didn't have a full Water Authority board until very recently, the work on that grant application has been delayed, but we now have a board in place, and we've been in touch with DEC. So we are gearing up to get that project moving forward again. We do think it's an important project, and that's part of the $100,000 that we're requesting in the budget is to help assist on that project.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that. I'll open up questions on the Planning Department's budget to committee members. I'd just like to reference that the Planning Department represents 1.13% of the total county budget. I'll offer the floor to Minority Leader Paduk. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How are you, Mr. Thornton? Listen, on the consultant services line, can you please lay out all of the funding that 215 goes for? And I want to remind all the other legislators that $115,000 that we give to libraries, 75% of them are already taxing everybody. So if you're going to continue to give 115 for whatever, however they use it, I'm going to be voting against it. And just give me the list. You said the land trust for 25 grand. This is all coming from the county executive's office to be put in your budget, right?
We would have to, if it's in our budget, it would be money that our department would determine how to use it with respect to the land trust. We'd have to subsequently have a contract for those specific tasks. But I want to answer your question on the library line. Yeah, it's a library association. The amount of $115,000 has historically been placed in our budget for this purpose. I had reached out to get clarification because I didn't have a full understanding of the history of this in terms of what the dollars were used for. So it's my understanding from conversations with members of the Library Alliance that the funding is used to include computer management software and electronic resources that each of the libraries in the Ramapo Catskill Library System utilize. And so the way that they distribute the funding is they give each of the libraries 2 payments. One at the beginning of the year, one towards the middle of the year. And the first payment, as I understand it, is based on, it's just a equal amount that goes to each of the libraries. The second is actually based on population. I'm probably getting in the weeds on this a little bit. So that the funding that the county provides gets distributed to each of those libraries that are part of the association for the purpose that they've stated. And I really don't have any other additional background information to provide other than that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Thornton. So can you give me the list? 115 for library, 25,000 for the land trust. Where's the other money going?
Well, it would be 25,000 specifically for the Browns Pond project, and then the other 75 would be set aside for other open space conservation easement work that we're anticipating in the year ahead. So those specific projects haven't been identified yet, but we see the need for their assistance in securing those easements, conservation easements, and also assisting in the monitoring of those easements.
Okay, just a comment from me. I won't vote for this library support. If it was going to the libraries that weren't in a taxing district, I'd be fine with it. Fact is that we're double taxing people by giving away $115,000 in county money so that they can have their internet. Now, I don't know if they got money from the rescue fund too. That's a possibility. So we should be looking into all of that stuff before we just say, well, we do it every year. Because we do it every year doesn't make it appropriate. So are we going to go on with his budget, or is that where I still have the floor, Mr. President?
Minority Leader, yes, sir, you have the floor.
Okay, then let me go right to your fund, 80-20, and paying your contractual expenses. I've talked about it for every department. You're no different. In 17, $956,000 wasn't spent that we taxed people on. 1.2 million in 18, 2.92 million in 19, and $4.67 million that we tax our residents on that you did not use. My proposal here, and planning doesn't have a contractual, austerity contractual line, so I'm going to propose that we add line 579990 and put $250,000 minus $250,000 on that, in that line, and I need a second.
Mr. Paduk has a motion to create line 579990 with a dollar amount of minus $250,000. Seek a second. I do not see a second, Mr. Paduk. A second by Mr. Kulisek. Discussions to the motion before us. I'll call for a roll call, Doreen. I'm sorry, Mr. Hines. Mr. Hines, the floor is yours, sir.
I just have a question for Mr. Thornton. I suspect that some of the grant money doesn't come through if we don't use it. Is that some of what Mr. Paduk is referencing?
Yeah, correct.
So that it could be disastrous to your budget is my point, because I think some of the money that was unspent wasn't used because the bus system wasn't working in COVID. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had delays because of that, so we're depending on that funding.
Right. So those numbers that I think just came out, or at least for last year, are not accurate. Some buses, I remember the buses weren't running at all at one point, and so the state wasn't giving you the money.
Right. There were delays in the receiving the state operating assistance, and yes.
Yeah. So I think that number is way too aggressive. I'm not going to support it anyway, but it's way too aggressive.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Additional questions from committee members? Mr. Paduk, hold on, let me turn your mic on. Mr. Paduk, the floor is yours, sir.
Is Mr. Hines referring to the $250,000 proposal or the $4.6 million? Because I understand COVID and everything that went down, that number is inflated. My request is for them to do a better job at $250,000. Nothing to do with millions, but it saves our taxpayers money. So I didn't know what you were referring to, so I guess that was a question for you.
If I could answer, the taxation portion of the budget is $1,375,000. All that other money is state and federal grants.
That is correct.
Yeah, so their budget is really $1,375,000 taxation. So to cut it.
That's right, and I we put in that line the austerity contractual $250,000. My request.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to to create the line at $250,000. Doreen, would you take a roll call, please?
Cheney,
No.
Hines, Kulisek, Paduk, Bureau, Fagione.
No.
4 noes, 2 ayes, motion fails.
Mr. Paduk, sir, I'll still offer you the floor.
I guess I don't know how many people actually looked at the budget that was prepared, but maybe before our next meeting we could have a better look at it and you'd understand where my proposals are coming in. That's all. Well, thank you, Mr. Paduk.
Thank you, Mr. Paduk. That being said, any additional questions in regards to the planning department's budget on pages 515 through 523? Mr. Kulisek, sir, the floor is yours.
Just comment on the Browns Pond issue. Browns Pond is a very important reservoir for the city of Newburgh, not only the city of Newburgh, but the town of Windsor. There's an interconnection between the two, and the Windsor needs water. It also comes from Browns Pond. I'm looking for the support from all the other legislators on this thing.
Thank you, Mr. Kulisek. Very good point. Any additional questions, Mr. Cheney? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Line item 579530, subcontractor payments. Is that predominantly transportation related?
Jane, what page are you on?
I'm 521.
Oh, okay. Yes.
The subcontract payments. It's the last line under contractual.
Yes, those are our ADA contract and our transit services contract. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Any additional questions in regards to the planning department budget? Not seeing any, I'll call the question on that portion of the budget. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Mr. Sorensen, we're not done with you yet.
Okay.
We'll turn to the Council of the Arts. This is pages 524 through 526. I need a motion and a second to this portion of the budget. Motion by Mr. Cheney, second by Mr. Vero. And Commissioner, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, we have a contract with the Council of Arts, and their mission is to promote arts in Orange County, provide resources to artists and arts institutions. Their request, our department request was for 120. That was reduced by 40,000, and what you have before you is a request of 80,000. Well, that shows an increase of 40,000 from the year prior. The year before that, we had to cut that in half due to COVID. So it's really restoring it to pre-COVID levels.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the explanation on that. Although this just for reference, this portion of the budget is a 0.01% of the total county budget. I will say this, and I think I've said this years in past. My only concern I have here is that the role of government in defining what art is also defines what art is not. What I might find as a beautiful painting, someone might find as disgusting or awkward or weird. So I just caution every branch of government at every level that when you assign taxpayer money to what you deem as art, you also deem what is not art. I don't think that that's the role of the government. That being said, I still will support this because I do appreciate the art and artisans that live in our community. And that being said, any additional questions from committee members? I'll start with you, Minority Leader Perdue, sir. Mr. Perdue, you have the floor.
No, sir, no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Perdue. Additional questions? Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours.
Yes, just one point of clarification. Pre-COVID, the 2020 adopted budget provided $99,400 to the Council of the Arts. I'm glad to see it having been returned to the 80,000. Maybe in the future we can look to trying to bring it up to where we actually were in the 2020 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Any additional questions? I see we have Madam Chairwoman Finelli. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sorensen, you may or may not know this, and I apologize if you do not, but we can find out. Historically, the monies that were allocated in this budget were a disbursement to the Orange County Council of the Arts, and half of that went to them as a contract, and then the other half went to various different things at the county executive's discretion. Is that still the way we're dispersing this money? Are you aware?
I'm going to ask for clarification. Yeah. So actually on that same budget page, the 40,000 that previously was allocated in the small event has been removed. And so it's on, oops. Let me get to that budget page. I want to be able to point you directly to it. So the 40,000 that was, for things like mini grants or things like that, that's been removed.
That's been moved into your planning budget?
We eliminated that portion because there were two separate lines.
Correct, yes.
And now there's just the one line for the 80,000.
And the 80,000 is going to the Council for the Arts, or it's going for various different types of grants and programs?
That's going specifically to the Council of the Arts.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Any additional questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the question on this portion of the budget. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Oh, we do have, before you leave, Doreen is keeping me on spot. We have capital plans, so get your capital plan booked out.
Okay.
Thank you, Doreen. And if you will, turn to page, I think it's page 8 of the capital, and about almost all the way down at the end of the capital, you'll see two lines. If my eyes don't deceive me, that is 90, 96 and 97. And these are two items on the capital And Dorian, for reference, we have to take a motion. I need a motion for these two lines in capital for planning. A motion by Mr. We're going to start with the first one. Motion by Mr. Kulisek, second by Mr. Cheney. Any discussion on this line? This is the open space fund, and the county share is $1 million. Any discussion or questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? All right, motion carries. Second line is for planning transportation, and this is the additional buses, the replacement. I'll seek a motion in a second on that capital line. Motion by Mr. Kulisek, second by Mr. Cheney. Any discussion on those capital proposals? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor, aye. Opposed? Both carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you, Dorman. All right, and moving along on our agenda, last before us is item number 10. And this is a local, I'll seek a motion in a second on the following. A local law amending local law number 8 of 1972, fixing the compensation for the commissioners of elections, at last amended by local law number 13 of 2020. Need a motion and a second, please. Motion by Mr. Zero, and a second, I'll second this myself. And in speaking with Mr. Paduk earlier this morning, just to let everyone know the groundwork of why we are here today with this, the plans were in works that setting the salaries for the positions of Commissioner of Elections. The plan was to bring this forward next month during committee and then voting on it subsequently thereafter. It was brought to attention this Monday afternoon that due to our schedule in the calendar, that this must be taken care of in this month for the subsequent years ahead. So that being said, we have this resolution here before us, and it is simply enough, a local law amending local law number 8, fixing the compensation for the commissioners of elections. I will say that, like I mentioned, I was planning on having this come forward in next month. That being said, it is here before us, and I will offer the floor to questions or comments from my colleagues. Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. To bring this forward at this point in time is very necessary. Obviously, the reasons are significant. I am disappointed that we didn't have the full length of time to be able to just understand the ramifications of this, that all legislators would have had more information than just is what presented here before us. And because of that, I would like to offer an amendment to the local law and to make it just a 1 year, and then we would come back and give it the diligence that it requires. My amendment would be to remove 2023 at $95,182 and 2024 at $97,560.
I have a motion by Mr. Cheney here on the floor to remove the items for 2023 and 2024 to this local law. I seek a second on that. I'll make this. The second is made by Mr. Hines. Discussion on the amendment to the resolution here before us. Mr. Hines, sir, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Who came up with these numbers?
I will tell you, Mr. Hines, Monday afternoon, in a discussion that I had with the chairwoman of the legislature, and we looked at the budget book, and a quick estimate was made that some of the contractual salary, some of the contracts within the county government represented about, on average in the last few years, about a 2.5% increase on salary lines. And so arbitrarily, I put that number out there. I will offer the floor to the chairwoman of the legislature. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you're absolutely correct. The timing of this became very critical in that we had not taken into consideration that we have to allow for permissive referendum on this particular local law, which forced our hand to bring it forth this month versus next month. And that was the original plan, but unfortunately that was the case. So this came to our attention while the chairman of Ways and Means, Lee Benton, was in the building, as well as, I believe, John, Majority Leader, was in the building as well. And so was the Rules Chairman. And the four of us met with council, and that was how these numbers were derived at. But I am certainly open to suggestions with all of this. We floated around if it should be a 1 year or it should be complete, because usually this is a 4-year type of salary fix, just like we did with our compensation as well. It was fixed for 4 years. So this would have brought them, this proposal that you have before you actually brings it on par with the way it would have been. But here again, I understand Mr. Cheney's position as to that he'd like more time to take a look at it. So he has put forth what I believe would be a compromise resolution to consider. But I'm personally open to suggestions.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Hines, sir.
Yeah, so based on that explanation, I think it solidifies Legislator Cheney's point. It may even help the commission in the future if we have a chance to look at this, because I only saw this, I think it was yesterday, without even talking to my colleagues from all three parties, not to mention the commissioners themselves. I don't even know if they think this, we can even talk about it. So I think that doing it for 1 year, just because the time that we're up against, it would be the fairest way to do it, and then we can all talk either next month, next year, or even next year, whenever we need to.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Additional questions to the motion to amend here on the floor? Okay, not seeing any. I'm going to ask for a roll call on the amendment itself.
Cheney,
Yes.
Hines, Kulisek, Paduk, Bureau, Fagione.
Yes.
6 days, motion passes.
So the motion's been made, so now I will call the question on item number 10 as amended. And again, as amended, I will ask for a roll call vote on that. Doreen, would you call the roll, please?
Cheney,
Yes.
Hines, Kulisek, Paduk, Bureau, Fagione.
Yes.
6 days, motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Doreen, for that. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for this afternoon. I want to pause for a moment and thank legislative staff, as well as the budget staff and the budget director. These weeks are long, these meetings are long and arduous, and I appreciate all of your efforts. You're doing good, noble work for the county and the citizens, and I appreciate all your time and effort. Thank you all. I look for a motion to adjourn. Thank you all. Be well.